Right, so we're approaching about halfway into Ultimate Conquest now. We're past round 3, so we're getting into round 4, which will be the halfway mark, but obviously past this round there'll only be 6 alliances left in the competition. So I'm just going to talk over things I feel like we've learned. If my predictions have changed, which I think they have in places actually, because of a few things that have happened since the competition have started. Talk about where I was wrong, because I think I was in places, and just go over everything. So in terms of my predictions, they've been, I feel like, kind of bad. I would have liked them to have been better at least. But the 2 matches I got wrong basically were HOH versus TBE and SPL versus GGS, and I said in my predictions video that both of these would be 50-50 matchups. And in fairness, or to my defense, SPL versus GGS was. This was a real close match. I think, from what I understand, GGS lost this in the last like 5 minutes or so. And you can see 3,000 in AC is a very, very small margin of victory. So SPL did very well there. SPL always very, very good in events. They always get such good attendance. They always throw everything they have at it. They always really, really impress me. With HOH against TBE, I think I was very wrong here in my prediction. I definitely probably underestimated HOH and overestimated TBE simultaneously. So my theory going in was we played HOH and we ran them really, really close. And in my opinion, against TBE, TBE would be favourites against us. So in my mind, knowing that, I thought it would be about a 50-50 matchup, because our match against HOH was pretty much a 50-50 matchup. We lost Mother on like their first rotation of rallies, and I feel like if we kept that, we probably would have won. We obviously didn't, and we weren't even close to keeping it, but if we like swapped a bigger banner in or something, there was a scenario there where we win for sure. And after this match, I saw that Chaos left to join Mad for UC, so I thought they lost a max account. That's a huge blow, and that sort of leveled the playing field a bit. But what I definitely underestimated, just the amount of active accounts they brought in for UC, and whilst I don't entirely know the situation necessarily, they definitely brought in some like good middling rally leaders, like this guy from ABO. He's in our Glorious Battle group, and he can clear level 3 NPCs easily. He's got that reinforcement skill to 8 or 9. He's definitely a very strong like mid-tier rally leader. You've got the likes of don't care, I think this is the Russian Afika account, which again is probably not a huge name, but in terms of a rally leader against TBE, that's a really strong account, and that will do damage against them. So that really mitigates the loss of Chaos, just in terms of a big body, and then just the extra, they had 17 more participants here against TBE than they had against us. That is a huge deal just in terms of reinforcements and spreading losses around, filling rallies and stuff like that. And TBE, they did recruit this guy, for example, and I'm pretty sure they like swap them onto buildings, but their roster's fairly similar just to their normal AC season in comparison to HOH's. So I definitely think there was a pretty big swing in HOH's favour there, which I did not account for, and because of that I think HOH were quite clear favourites in retrospect, and that's how it played out. They disbanded for TBE to get them above 60k. It was pretty close, but I think HOH were always mostly in control of both matches realistically. Other than that, I don't think there was any major upsets really. I think everything else mostly went as expected. I did think Ash against OBB might have been a bit more competitive, which it doesn't seem like it was. They pretty much lost by the same margin of victory as they did to WTP. Maybe there was disbanding involved there, I'm not entirely sure, but Ash's participants is a fair bit lower than like their competition recently, which is surprising because Ash have always been an alliance which has historically gotten like huge attendances and just beat out people in events purely through numbers and just commitment to throwing speed ups at it, and they'd win whilst being at severe whale disadvantages just through sheer perseverance, which is definitely a lot trickier when you're not even getting 80 members in. In this third round, OBB against M3O, they made it pretty competitive, but M3O still pretty handed winners there. And then past that, it's just projecting forwards, right? So in my initial predictions, I had, in this fourth round, I had Mad winning this match and then BDR winning in the finals, which was a very weird way of doing it, but that prediction was more focused on how closely matched those two alliances are, or I thought they were at least, because I thought it was very, very unlikely that one of those two alliances would win back-to-back, just because they were so closely matched, there's so many variables. I just thought it was a more likely result that it would go 1-for-1. But I think my opinion on that has slightly changed, and there's a few reasons for that. So BDR is seemingly going from strength to strength. They've basically had 2 walkover matches where neither RPG or us tried at all. So they've saved a lot of speed ups there. They haven't used anything really in UC whatsoever. Like, they've had their top accounts like Mr. X just going mental to pad the elimination points leaderboards, but they haven't had to do anything really. We literally didn't rally them on a single location deliberately, because we just wanted to save our troops to rally their personal castles to get to 30k. But if you look at the healing rankings, no one had to do anything at all. When you compare that to say Mad, they had to play CTP here, and they had to burn not crazy amounts, but a fair bit more than BDR had to against us, especially just when you get to these like more middling players who don't spend as much. This will start taking its toll the deeper you get into the competition. So I think Mad are a little lower on speed ups because of that. And my initial prediction there was definitely flawed in its logic, honestly, because something I didn't give enough credit, which someone corrected me in the comments over, is if you win this match, you effectively avoid CTP and the loser of WTP versus FDH, which will both be really harsh matches in terms of speed up consumption. The amount of healing those will expend will be massive. You'll have to burn a lot of March speed ups on reinforcing. You'll have to, if you win races, probably swap like 3 or 4 times just of slow marches, let alone like hard swaps. That will burn so many March speeds. The free-to-play reinforcers will be feeling that so much when you get to the later stages. So staying in the winners bracket gives you such a big advantage in terms of speed up retention. And I also just have some doubts, honestly, over Mad's Wales spending right now, which is maybe a bit of a weird thing to comment on and maybe shouldn't be an immediate concern. But in the context of winning Ultimate Conquest against the other best alliances in the event, I think it has to be. So when you look at Mad's roster, you look at their top accounts, there are a lot of people in here that just aren't spending right now, or I think they aren't spending. So if you look down, you've got Chaos, this is Savo's ult, and right now this is being sold. And because of that, I'm pretty sure 0 money is being spent in it, which means no speed ups or diamonds coming from black diamonds, which means it can't just solo like crazy, it can't do max account stuff, which the likes of Mr. X is doing in BDR consistently. You also have, when you look down the list, this is the Death to All account, and I think I saw the other day this is also being sold, which I assume means there's at least reduced spending on it. Plus that is also the shot caller of your alliance, which at least from an outsider perspective casts some doubts, honestly. Just in terms of commitment, because you know BDR is all in, you know they're going all out, and they're not holding anything back. And then when you look further down, like Vilmaris is selling. Apophis, I've seen this being piloted by Lois in his Chronicler videos. Is that being spent on? I have no idea, honestly. But it isn't Apophis himself actively playing the account. I don't know the situation there. LA Lakers, the GSW account, again, it's being sold. GSW isn't playing, there's no money being spent on it. So they have effectively like 3 near max accounts not being spent on. So whilst they are really strong, they just can't throw their weight around like crazy just because there's limitations on how much they can sustain. And if they go into the losers bracket and have to go through CTP and either WTP or FDH, their speed ups will be burn and burn and burn, and they just won't be able to restock them as well as, and they just won't be able to restock them like BDR, because BDR won't have to burn them if they win this match. So Mad really have to win this first one, in my opinion. If they go to the losers bracket, they're in big trouble, I think. I still think they'll get to the final, but I think winning it will be made incredibly difficult for them. So they really want to avoid that situation if at all possible. And because of that, I'm going to put BDR as now my favourites to win this first match and win the second match in the final as well. For the rest of these matches, Reese, I mean, maybe we'll try against CTP for at least like 10-15 minutes, but it will be a miracle if we can do anything against them. We just don't have the accounts for it, sadly. I think Reese hopefully has impressed people. We always punch above our weight in terms of our account strength. I do feel like we're one of the more organised event alliances in the game. We put a lot of effort into that. We try to hold people to very high standards. And maybe like with some new recruits we can take a next step. We're not there right now. We're not there yet. And we know that. We know our limit. And we just try and have fun with it regardless, because we know what we can and can't do. M3O against HOH. Honestly, this might be made a bit more competitive than you would initially expect, but I do think M3O will come away with it eventually. But HOH might run it to maybe like 50k, but keeping pace with M3O has always been very hard. But this winners bracket is looking really interesting. And BDR versus Mad is obviously the blockbuster of the two, but WTP against FDH will be a really interesting match, I think. In my initial predictions, I said that I expected FDH to pick 7 PM, 10 PM, and 1 AM as their time slots, and WTP to pick 1 AM, 7 AM, and 1 PM. And even though FDH were the lower seed, they would get their normal event time, and WTP would get their least comfortable of the three. But I can't actually show this because I'm in UC still, so I can't do like on match predictions. But this match is actually at 7 AM, which I find very odd that FDH picked that. But they did merge with OGS, who played events at 7 AM. I assume it's probably something to do with availability because of that. But I do have doubts about their numbers that they'll get at that time. I don't think we've ever seen them play at that time slot ever. So God knows what to expect there. And that's a bit of an equalizing factor for me, because I do think if all things were equal, I would favour FDH in this. Because if you've watched any of these matches, they have been consistently timing rallies really well, and consistently getting their strongest accounts onto buildings. And if FDH are getting their strongest accounts onto buildings, then they are horrifying, because the amount of max accounts or near max accounts and just top rally leaders they have is as good as anyone realistically, but maybe with like ATD. They have a very strong roster of accounts, and when their coordination has taken as much of a step up as it has, then you really have to stop and take notice of that. But despite that, I really do not know what to expect in this matchup because of the time slot. Because I don't even know how WTP's attendance will be at that. Because they have quite a lot of, as far as I understand it, like English speaking players. So 7 AM is decent for like Asian players, but for English speaking players it can be quite awkward, honestly, especially in Europe if you got work and stuff. But it isn't a Saturday, I guess, so if people don't have work, it's UC, you just show up, right? You set the alarm and just do your best. So I will favour FDH ever so slightly, but I do think that the circumstance of this really throws a wrench in it, and anything could happen there. So I think BDR win this, FDH win this, and then BDR win that, and then win the whole thing against whoever that is. I can probably just go to my predictions to make this a bit easier to see. So I think Mad here is swapped with BDR, except BDR keep going all the way and win it. I do think Mad, when they drop down in this place, will do what I thought BDR would do, where they'll beat CTP, they'll beat WTP, they'll beat FDH. But I just think they'll be bled dry by the time they get in the finals. Because being CTP, WTP, FDH back to back, that is so many speed ups. That is horrifying to even think of. It's during Glorious Battle too, and Glorious Battle is just destroying people's speed up reserves. I think the last time I fought in it, I had to use 120 days speed ups to just rebuild the troops I lost, let alone the healing bills. And my fights aren't as painful as some of these alliances are, because quite a few of them are in much scarier groups than I am in right now. I think in this bottom of the losers bracket it's the same. CTP still beat Reese, M3O still beat HOH, even though I had TV here. So yeah, definitely a few things different to how I initially predicted, but nothing too crazy realistically. It's still fairly closely matching what I expected. But I think going into the next round, that is the main focus. Is you have to stay in the winners bracket, because playing the extra 2 alliances down here during Glorious Battle, maybe for the max accounts, for the top rally leaders it's fine, but your reinforcers will have no speed ups at all, and you just have to avoid that if you want to win it all. Because it's UC, you can't be peaking in the 4th or 5th round, you need to peak in that 8th round if you want the win. So you need to be ready to go, and you need to have the resources there to throw everything you have on your account at that match and have it push you over the edge. And I just think BDR are in slightly better position to pull that off. We'll see how it all plays out. I think this is where UC starts getting really, really exciting, especially these alliances in the winners bracket right now. These 4, all matches with these 4 alliances against each other are going to be so fun to watch, because anything can happen in any of them realistically. They can all beat each other if everything goes right for them, which is a totally different playing field compared to the last, well, every last Ultimate Conquest realistically. In the first one, everyone knew BCL were going to win and no one could compete with them. And then the next 2, everyone knew Rum were going to win and no one could compete with them. And it's very, very different here, which is very exciting as a spectator, even if most people don't really care what goes on outside of their alliance, which is fair enough. But if you're around at the times of these matches, use the spectator system, try and watch them. Maybe Wilkie will stream some of these later ones. I think Zay Wallace too. In WTP, he's been streaming their matches with a bit of a delay, so you can probably watch their matches through him as they go through the tournament. If you can't get into the spectator yourself, or just want more of an inside look into how it's being done there. And yeah, best of luck to everyone left in the competition.